The appeals court in New York has New York Democrats panicked. After watching this entire video, you will be convinced that the Trump fraud conviction will be overturned, and also Trump is likely going to get his $500 million fine returned to him. And if that happened before Election Day, that'd be especially a great gift for him to spend on the campaign. I'm David with Patriot Mindset. Let's jump into this video.
May it please the court, Judith Vale for the New York Attorney General's office. All of the defendants repeatedly violated...
Ms. Vale, can you identify any previous case in which the Attorney General sued under Executive Law 6312 to upset a private business transaction that was between equally sophisticated partners, where the supposed victim had the ability and legal obligation to discover the allegedly misrepresented matters by conducting its own due diligence, where the supposed wrongdoer advised the supposed victim through written disclaimers to conduct its own due diligence and to draw its own conclusions, where the alleged misrepresentation almost entirely concerned inherently subjective valuations of properties and businesses.
Yes.
And where the victim never complained about any fraud in the transactional losses from it.
He just destroyed that Democrat lawyer verbally because she is bringing this crazy case. Trump had 21 previous loans that he repaid to this particular bank, paid interest, paid off the principal, no issues whatsoever. There was written disclosures from Trump to the bank. Do your own due diligence. This case was election interference from the beginning, and these attorneys that actually represented Letitia James in court, they're likely to get sanctioned, which could be monetary fines, censured or publicly reprimanded, suspensions of license, disbarment, referral to a grievance committee, could be impact on future cases. It's huge because this is a case that never should have happened. And this gentleman, shout out to him on TikTok. His account is Team FU Joe. He is talking in more detail about what happened in the courtroom and why this fraud case is going to be overturned. And it's just the first. All of Trump's convictions are going to be overturned once they get to the proper appeals because they were politically motivated. We know it.
So the Trump fraud case went before the appellate court this week, and by the time it was over, the closing arguments of the Democrat lawyers was just them begging to not get sanctioned. So look, many people aren't aware that the Trump fraud case went before the appeals court this week. And if you don't know how an appeals court works, there are 5 judges that sit in judgment for these cases. And they basically let the prosecution and the defense both lay out their cases. And their job is to consider whether or not the case was worth hearing in the first place. And it went so badly for the Democrat lawyers that by the end of it, their closing arguments was just them begging to not get sanctioned. So they argued a ton of different things throughout this case. But the biggest thing was the judges kept interrupting them. They kept saying, hold on. Can you find me one other time in history where the person who took the loan was able to call the bank that they took the loan from, and then that bank showed up and said, we weren't defrauded? And the lawyers spent like 2 hours trying to find one little instance where it happened. But then the judges said, okay, let's...
They literally said, they showed up and said, hey, we weren't defrauded, the bank themselves.
Something else. They said, hey, have you ever prosecuted someone for lying about the value of a property when it resulted in the entire loan being paid back with interest? And again, they gave them like 2 hours to try to explain their case, and they still couldn't produce a single case where that had happened. And then the judges said, hey, you know what? We'll give you another shot. They said, have you ever seen an attorney general prosecute a case where there was no damage to the public? There was no damage to the person you said was defrauded, and there was no actual malice committed by the person who took the loan. And then they took another like 6 hours on that one. And by the end of it, the judges were like, so you don't have any instance of that happen. And then by the time they were done, the judges were like,
Rigged.
I don't even know if this is a case that should have been brought. And they said, look, y'all might need to be sanctioned for bringing this case in a malicious manner. One of the judges actually said, I have come to believe that since a case like this has never been brought in the history of the country, not only New York, that you have only brought this case because the person was running for president, which would put you afoul of not only multiple regulations regarding the law, but would also run you afoul of electioneering interference. In fact, at the end of it, when they got to give their closing arguments, instead of arguing the value of their case, instead of arguing that like we should have been able to bring this case because of X and Y and all this shit, they actually just said at the end, we hope that the court will take into account that lawyers need to be able to bring cases like this without the threat of sanction.
Wow.
Basically, they were saying, we hope that you decide that we're not going to get in trouble for bringing this bullshit case. That was what happened at the appellate court. So Trump being found guilty of fraud and having to pay 500 some odd million fucking dollars, and the whole left celebrating about that, he's going to get all that money back because the appellate court was like, this is a bullshit case. The people he took the loan from literally came to court on his behalf and said, hey, we weren't defrauded. We knew he overvalued Mar-a-Lago, and we took that into our calculations. And even if we had taken that into our...
That's how real estate works. You always blow up your numbers. You want to give the best representation, but they get to come in and do their numbers, the other party. That's how it works.
Calculations. And the value of Mar-a-Lago was part of 0.14. Like the president of Deutsche Bank said, you know why we gave him the loan? It had nothing to do with the value of Mar-a-Lago. It had to do with we've given him 21 other loans, and he has paid back all 21 with interest. We were giving him the loan regardless of the value of anything. And that's where the appellate court was like, how do you have a case? Deutsche Bank literally said we were giving him the loan regardless. And that's when they started begging to not get sanctioned. So yeah, that's what happened with the Trump fraud case this week. Going really well for the Democrats.
They are panicking, and we have this article here where we've had Rick Scott from Florida. He said people are sick and tired of this lawfare, and the Dems are using it against President Trump. They know they can't beat him at the ballot box, so they're trying to come at him through the courts. And Trump called it election interference back on August 27th, which he cited a DOJ rule that if there's any kind of action taken by the DOJ within 60 days of an election, that is considered election interference, according to their rule, or that is considered to influence an election, rather. So there you go. And Polymarket, by the way, Trump is up 7.9% over Kamala Harris and is predicted to win the election and quite possibly the popular vote, in addition to the Electoral College, because Kamala Harris, her recent interviews have been really bad. The response to Helene was really bad, and Trump has just been surging in all of the swing states. It's a great thing. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, again, I'm David, Patriot Mindset. Hit that subscribe or follow button. If you happen to be on YouTube, they think you'll enjoy this video up here next. I'll catch you soon. God bless.